late opening of the door, but it's important business. So, we'll start out this evening with the Jamie Schlesinger on the presentation on potential bond issues.
Good evening. Good to see you again. I'll be rather brief. I know most of you were here last week, so I can certainly answer any questions, but this is a continuation of the opportunity to refinance the A and B of 2009. We received bank proposals a week or so ago. We concluded that the best proposal came from Customers Bank at 1.35%. That would produce close to $280,000 of savings net of all fees. We're back tonight with a board resolution that you could act on to accept that proposal from Customers Bank to allow the process necessary to refinance that existing debt and settle earlier next year to start with the step process for the refinancings of the other existing debt. So there's lots of numbers here. It's essentially the same thing as we talked about. Overall, it's a great opportunity here to refinance, great rates, and overall our recommendation would be to go with Customers Bank. So I'll certainly go through each number again, but it's essentially the same presentation that we talked about.
Maybe, yeah, I wasn't here last week. The only question I would have, and it's something that I've raised, and I think the rest of the board members have raised as well. When we go into these refinancing, one of the things we're concerned about is obviously our budget every year as far as how much we're paying, and I know we try to keep it at level as far as our payments, but is there any other opportunities where we could have, like Customers Bank, say a 7 or a 10-year note or anything else ongoing where we are actually lowering our amount after I'm in the mortgage industry, it's taken a 15-year note to 30. And I guess maybe it's my big fat head, I can't quite understand why we're not able to do that or more of that. Can you maybe explain that so I can understand?
Yeah, Peter can jump in as well on this. There's a couple things that we've looked into. Right now, your overall debt is essentially level. You have to fit within DCD's guidelines to be either level or declining. Right now, your overall debt service actually is level. What you have is a multitude of bond transactions that were done over the years that add together to make it level. So you need to essentially structure your debt with these different transactions to make sure, one, that we can meet the useful life tests that we have on the projects that you financed, which more than likely we'll be able to meet because these are all buildings and renovations and such, and they're going to go out long enough. The downside we have is we need to make sure when you do take out a piece of the debt, you need to keep it within the DCD guidelines to keep it either level or declining over the life of loans. So as an example, with this particular transaction, it is a short piece because we're taking out only a short piece of debt. Where we could go out and take out the larger chunks to extend your debt would be related to the 2010 issue, which would be the next round up. And then later on, your 2014 issue, which was a wrap. Our difficulty is the 2014 has a call date that's far enough along that if you were to advance or fund it or do something differently, the cost related to that would be pretty high because you have to put money in an escrow. So it's a combination of economics and meeting the state requirements. I think we can do some of it, but it's a little more difficult just given the fact that there's different issues outstanding that wrap around each other. So that's the concern. I think with this particular transaction, it's short, and this is a good one to do it this way. But maybe the 10 we can play around with and maybe extend it by a few years. But there's only so much we can do with that 10 because of the way your other debt is structured, that we can only go out so far to meet those tests. If that helps you in any way.
Any other questions for me?
Again, I'd be happy to go through the details in this one, but again, it was pretty clear from what we received that Customers Bank is the best proposal and has the most savings related to this particular transaction, and really going forward, that's what we talk about the next steps.
Right, and we did discuss the RFP for
Oh, yeah.
the next piece to go ahead and do that in business functions, so I think
Everyone's
the
comfortable.
board's receptive to going ahead and trying that.
Okay. And so we can put together a similar RFP with step 2, see what we can get, and report back to another board meeting. And in between all that, we'll do the work we need necessary to either do it as a bank loan or bond issue and work with Peter on that timing. So,
Jamie, though, with the restrictions and I understand that when we go into a refunding, we can't just extend a maturity from, say, a 10-year to a 15 or a 20-year. We have to keep it within the original bond maturity spectrum.
we can extend, as long as it meets the useful life test, which I think it will. The restriction we have is, and I think probably the best way to look at this is on page 2 of the presentation. And I'm sure you're looking at the same thing. That's the overall outstanding debt of the district. The piece related that I would say you could start to extend debt would be your 2010 bonds. And if you look on column 17 or column 5, that's your gross debt service on the top and your local equity, meaning after reimbursement debt service. Because that transaction is done as a wrap structure, meaning you essentially back-end loaded to meet the level debt, column 24 needs to be level or declining. So if we could, which we could probably play around with the extension of the 2027 maturity, we can probably take some of that principal and go a little farther out. The problem we have is because column 20 and column 23 have 2.5 or 2.8, $2.3 million of principal essentially in debt service, we can only go so far to make sure that that piece is level or declining overall. So we could probably take a little bit of that and stretch it out, but our bugaboo here essentially is column, the number 2028 maturity in column 20 and 23 to make those pieces level at this point.
And again, this is maybe this will clarify what I don't understand about the wording. What I thought the code suggested, and this may be an answer to my dreams, a local government unit shall not extend the term of outstanding debt through refunding to a maturity date that could not have been included in the original issue. I took that to mean that the original issue's maturity date set the parameter for how far we could go. You're saying that's not the case.
There needs to be, when you do the resolutions, there's a useful life that's built into it.
So what we could do is then, theoretically, we could then extend this not just with the term of this particular bond, but we could then, if we could make a useful life argument, which I'm sure we could, because these are all buildings and physical plants. Most of us expect a Watton Creek and Rifton to be around longer than 2028. We could then add maturities to 2029, 2030, 2031 with this refunding.
Except because of the 2012 and 2014 issue, those two pieces here would be very costly. You couldn't even do the second one in 2012. But the portion related to the 2014, if we took out that piece, we'd have to put some money in escrow. It's going to be very costly to make it work with the overall level amortization. That's the key here. Is you got to keep with column 24 to make the state happy, on top of the tax reasons, which is the useful life. I think we all can agree that the useful life pieces are going to be fine. This is buildings, this is purchase of land, whatever it may be, that's going to last for a long time. It's really the state's guidelines that we need to structure.
How much wiggle room do you have with the level playing payment?
It's changed a little bit over the last couple of years with new leadership and with the state. Here, can I answer the exact answer? 5%?
10%.
Yeah, 10% overall. So
By maturity.
by maturity, yeah. It's not a lot, but and again, you can't have balloons. That's the key here. They don't want balloons or anything out of the ordinary. So your structure right now is reasonably level. It's just a matter of how we can restructure it. if necessary.
Really limit your ability to maneuver your money and position it in the way that you want to.
Yes, because you need to meet both the state and the federal tax law. And I think we've got one side that we can handle. It's just the state side that makes it a little more difficult, or a lot more difficult in some cases.
Doing a good job.
Hey, I know things.
We're talking about refunding of the Series B and the Series C, correct?
This particular refinancing is the A and the B of 2009.
Well, A we have already taken care of with the loan.
Yes. And the
Okay.
B, you're taking care of with the loan. With this particular, you haven't approved it, of course, but that's what we're
Right.
talking about.
Okay.
The next step, which I would go out for bank RFP at this point, would be columns 5 and column 17. That's your 2010 issue. And it would be a portion of that to keep within the bank qualification side of it. And that would be related to pages 11 through 16, but really, we take out a portion of the 2010 on page 12. So it'd be page 13 is what we refund, and then the new debt could look like page 16. Again, we're trying to keep to what your current structure is to keep your overall debt level. So if we were to make a move in some form with restructuring, it could be with this particular piece, but again, it's somewhat limited given the state's guidelines. Maybe it's a couple $1 million of this to take out. Come back.
Jimmy, I thought you had indicated that the reason that customers' rate is so attractive was because of the length.
That's true.
So pushing it out may have other.
That's a good point. Traditionally, we like to have banks bid on kind of 10 to 15 year-ish. That's kind of the sweet spots for a lot of banks. I've certainly done 20 to 30. You lose a lot of banks because of the term. You certainly won't get fixed rates for those full term, or very little of them. But I hate to say it doesn't hurt to ask, because you may never know what you get. Without predicting the future, I would assume the bond may be the best alternative, but it doesn't cause any time issues here. It's just more of my time to put it together to see what we can get. You never know. So that's the rationale behind doing this. Doing that option with bank loans.
I think customers is also a relative startup, and that's why we've gotten a good rate there as well.
Yeah, I mean, I talked to customers today just as to make sure that they're still good, and of course they were. They would not be bidding on this second step because of the term. So there's an example right there that they wouldn't be able to do, and that's because they're not willing to give cap rates for that term. And that doesn't help with this type of world the way that you have
Yeah.
cap rates. Any other questions?
Now, the timeline, I did share this with everyone. Are you going?
Yeah, I have copies of them in case you didn't have it. With regard to the timeline potentially for the bank loans. Does anyone need a copy of this? What we'd be looking to do is, when we go on and solicit bank proposals for step 2, we would send them out, sometime next week. We would have the proposals come back on the 12th of December. Depending on what we receive, if we're not comfortable with what the market is, we can make a pretty good decision to, if this is what doing with bank loan versus bond issue, we can then go and start the process with the rating agency at that time, so there won't be any cost incurred related to doing the bond issue process. But in between all of that, we're going to all be working on getting the bonds together should we, cut the bank loan out. So if we do get something that makes sense with the bank loan, we would be able to come back, talk to you about that on December 16th, and ultimately even accept a bank proposal in January. So we kind of work in a similar fashion. When we get the rates, they hold the rates for a period of time, and we'll be able to accept it in a future meeting. So we should be able to meet all those timelines.
You need to know now at this point if it would, as far as the bond itself, if we would go that route, if it's a competitive bid or not. Do you need that information at this point?
It would be helpful, yes. I think we'd like to, we can certainly come back and do the parameters resolutions in a future meeting. That's the plan here. But, doing the bank loan would help. But we could be working with an underwriter on the official statement side of this. But we can certainly do a lot of it without them. If you do the competitive process, you wouldn't have an underwriter anyway in this case.
Earlier on, you certainly can't speak for the entire board, but the folks that were here at the business function meeting were leaning more towards the competitive bid, only just to give us a better opportunity to see exactly what's out there, unless there's someone who knows different. I think that's the direction we should go. So I think the bank, it's a prime example of going out with all the different options. I mean, those rates really varied.
It did. And again, we'll be willing to do anything you want. If that's the board's wishes, we'll be happy to watch. Would you like to talk to Peter about the legal side of this at this point, or are you comfortable with what he does thinks?
Oh, damn, you never know when it'll turn up.
So does the resolution cover everything we have to go on there?
The resolution that's on there is for the note.
Just for the note alone? So we need to give some guidance, Jamie, on, does anybody differ on going the competitive route?
We'll be moving.
We'll give you your resolution in due time.
Yeah, we'll hang out. Thank you.
Justin?
Good evening. Here to report regarding the Transportation Center. And at this point, we'd hope to be a little bit further along, but just to step back a little bit. We've met with the district administration, transportation supervisor several times. We've explored a number of different options on how to utilize the site, as well as spend some time learning exactly what was important to the operations of your organization. And as we started to put together some options and move a few things around, we have a pretty good handle on what we believe the building we'd like to present to both the building committee as well as the board is going to look like, and what the estimates cost of construction would be for that. As far as the site goes, we are still moving pieces and parts around at this point, because the one piece that we are finding a challenge is laying out the site well enough with the grades that are there, as well as being concerned with the potential for rock that may or may not exist throughout those areas on the site, that we can put together an estimate on the site work. First of all, we put together a layout for the site that is going to potentially minimize the amount of rock that we run into, but also then have a fair budget that we can put together regarding the site work. And so one of the things that I believe Mrs. Scottish has a proposal for this evening is a proposal for test borings, for 9 test borings to be performed to help us understand the characteristics of where the rock is and at what depths it is on the site, so that we can look at laying out the site as far as the lots for the buses, where the fuel areas are going to be, as well as the building and foundations are going to be located in such a way that we try to minimize the potential cost for dealing with the rock, as well as just understanding the characteristics of the soil on the site. So at this point, in all honesty, I hope to be able to, actually last Tuesday, presented to you a budget as well as what we're looking at this point, but I want to make sure that we're in a good place from what A, administration wants, as well as B, how your site's going to work, before we come to you with all that information to make sure that we're painting a very cohesive picture for you. So that's where we are at this point.
How much rock did we have to move in the construction of the building, and what impact did that have on the budget of construction? Was there a lot of rock there?
Maybe I'll let Ken answer that. I don't recall off the top of my head the amount of blasting.
For the building, we did extensive borings, and we kind of knew where the rock was, and we budgeted appropriately. There was some additional blasting that had to take place. The retention ponds along 562, which are right below where we're planning on putting the bus garage, had some of the unexpected rock at that time. It changed how we configured that pond from the original plan. So it wasn't a big surprise in terms of how the building was, and I can't remember exactly, but there was literally 100+ borings, so we knew pretty much where everything was. EI took the building and basically moved it to a place that would work best with the rock, which is basically the same thing Justin's talking about, is moving our biggest lots and our biggest footprint items to the best locations. Our expectation, based on what we know of that retention pond, is that along that hill, the rock is probably going to be consistently around 6 feet. And that causes a bunch of problems. I believe there's several of the layouts. I won't jump into too close to what Justin's going to say. So basically, test borings would confirm or deny, and pretty much would, if we want to make this a reasonable budget, steer us into a configuration of how we set things up.
Thank you.
Did you have the borings that we did before available to you with the results?
From what I understand, there weren't any taken down in that area.
Not in that area, because
So-
that was not a construction area.
One of the tricky things with test borings is obviously it tells you exactly where the rock is or isn't at that spot. But what's happened elsewhere, while what Ken's saying is probably
If they weren't taken
relatively
out, they're of no
accurate.
use to you.
But exactly, I mean, even when we drill, we're still going to be a little concerned, just because what happens if 5 feet this way, 5 feet that way, the characteristics change. But at least we get a flavor for what's in the area.
I
Whereas
just
the borings
didn't
were-
know what coverage we had with those before, and if the data was available to you, then you would know that.
From what we've talked about, again, yes, they were not in the area of the project site.
Justin, can
Yes.
I got this proposal
Sure.
around 5, and have you had a chance to look at it? So the total
Yes.
is really 11,980.
I don't believe so.
The
Let me just-
additional test for, so that's additional.
And I believe what they listed, and I will confirm this to you tomorrow morning, but, just follow up, but basically, the way this states, it's the estimated lump sum total cost of the scope of work is $79.50 plus expenses not to exceed $250. The following is a breakdown of payment schedule, which basically lists estimated costs for the subsurface investigation of $79.50. It then notes additional test borings at $4,030, and the way I read it, going back previous page, and I apologize, I don't know that, does everyone have this? Did you have the
No,
opportunity?
it came so
Okay.
late that I couldn't.
Yeah, and I was looking at it at 6 o'clock myself, so, and I apologize for that, but on the previous page, under subsurface investigation, it notes, based on the available information about the site, SVEI, that's Schuylkill Valley Engineering Incorporated, established a drilling program consisting of 9 test borings and 20 lineal foot of rock pouring. Test borings are proposed at a maximum depth of 25 feet for the subsurface evaluation. So going back to under the list of costs here, that's under subsurface investigation. I believe what they're getting at here is if there's a desire to have 9 more borings performed, the cost would be $4,030. Because ultimately part of this is mobilization and their analyses and what have you. So the more borings you do, they get cheaper as you do them, but we want to be judicious with the amount of money that's spent to start with. we don't want to, we want to make sure that we fit enough holes, but we don't want to turn the slate into Swiss cheese also. At that point, you're spending a lot of extra money for test borings.
You recommend the 7950, not the 11?
Plus there's the expenses that are $250, but I believe my understanding of this proposal is that it's for the 7950 is the 9 borings that were also included in that little sketch that they included with that.
Did Stackhouse comment on whether 9 borings is sufficient?
Yeah, because they seem to think that 10 would be too few when we discussed earlier.
Well, and I apologize for this, but basically, looking at the, I apologize for the size and background of the board and what have you, but this is the general area that we're speaking of here, and we've essentially looking at around strategically around the area. I would say that if, I don't want to step over your procedures, you see generally the area and the red dots and the borings, that, and I don't know what the board schedule is for December, I apologize for that. But it's certainly second and the 16th. I would suspect that if there's a need if we see something that's a need based on it being the 2nd and the 16th, we could probably get back in here to recommend that. But I would start off with the 9 that we're looking at this point and go from there. I hate to just arbitrarily go beyond what we're thinking is a good starting point unless we see a reason to go that far.
Do you feel the borings were going to be adequate to cover your foundation areas for that design?
My bigger concern isn't so much the foundation areas as it is the parking lots, because while we can, as you know, add some slope to the parking lots, generally that site ranges between 8 and 12% in slope, and you obviously can't do that. Maximum you're going to 3-4%, and that's even pushing it in some areas. So we're going to need to cut, we're going to need to fill, and we need to basically understand where, when we're cutting, that what are we cutting into, and we're going to hit some rock. We're going to have to deal with some. It's just we do not want to place a lot somewhere. If we would, pick it up and move to 50 feet, it could have saved a lot of money. We want to be able to make educated guesses in getting this layout that I guess purposely so small you can't read it at this point. So that if we can pull this way, tug this way. One thing that we talked about first was the path of travel the bus drivers would be taking to get to the buses. We had a relatively compact footprint, always trying to conserve land. But that was one of the first triggers then that caused us to recognize that we're potentially causing a problem with the rock, and also even in some cases the fill that would be necessary. So at that point we started to pull some things apart, recognizing that you have a very compact site right now where you're very tight, that there's going to be some little bit of travel distance on foot for your bus drivers from the point of where they park their cars to where they ultimately land with their buses. But we tried to keep that together at first, and as we started to recognize that the grades just weren't going to allow for that, we then started to pull apart to allow for more natural grading of hills to make up some of this difference. Any other questions on where we are? Again, I would have liked to have been a little further along and have information for you at this point, but at the same time, recognizing the challenges that may lie under that soil, I think it's prudent at this point to embark on some borings, get a better understanding of the characteristics of what's under the site, so that we can potentially pull and tug and move and maneuver to lay the site out that's going to be in the best fiscal interest of the project in the district.
Are we looking for a motion tonight to authorize the borings?
We have added
On the
it.
agenda? Yeah. But we're thinking this may not be, once the process starts, there may be a need for additional borings.
Well, I guess you could coordinate the mobilization to around December.
We'll get you a schedule in the next couple days with, I don't know what Schuylkill Valley's schedule is for
Or not to
performing
exceed.
borings. I would think that we're probably, and I'm just shooting from the hip here, probably a week or two out before a rig get out here. And of course, we have the Thanksgiving holiday coming up, which isn't going to help. So I would suspect that the rig's probably entering the site around the first week of December, or really starting to get, pardon the pun, full bore on this. Had to. But so at that point we can, and we'll be talking with the guys in the field, and I'll go out and take a look at the field, what's going on as it's occurring, just to get a sense of what they're seeing, what they're finding at certain locations. And at that point, I'm sure Ken's going to be interested. We'll be at this, looking at it, talking about it, and we'll figure out if we need to come back and ask for some additional locations.
Well, I guess my thought is, rather than stop the process and wait for more board authorization, if we treat this in the same spirit as we do change orders.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd like to see the administration be able to make the decision within a framework, right?
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense, you're talking about an additional $4,000, right?
If 9 more borings were to occur.
If that would become
Sure.
necessary,
That's correct, yes.
that would make sense.
So could we authorize the maximum? and-
I'm just gonna split up, not to
Maybe we'll
exceed,
come
not
out
to
ahead.
exceed
Not to
12.5.
exceed, okay.
That way you have your flexibility if you get to that point without moving the equipment.
Are there any other questions regarding either this or the project at this time? Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Back to Sue.
Thanks, hello. I want to update you about special education. Dr. Martin had let me know that typically you hear a summary of the amount of students we have, so that was the first bullet point of the information I shared tonight. Typically, we have child count, which is the PDE and the state's way of saying one time a year, we look at on a certain date what the district numbers are, because it changes every single day. How many students we have. So that's called child count, and that's on December 1st. So as you can tell, we're winding into it all right now, and we're getting down to the end of our child count, getting all the documents and paperwork in order. For the 2013-14 official child count number was 742 for the district, which drove out to be about 17.9% of the population. For 14-15, we're looking like we're coming in around 725. So we are having a bit of a drop in special education identified students. I didn't know if there were any questions about special education as a whole before I talk about the 2 other programs that I wanted to discuss.
Of what percentage, can you give us a kind of a rough estimate of like how many are like mentally challenged, how many are physically challenged?
Which disability categories?
Yes.
From our child count from last year, autism was 9.5%, which is a category that's been a bit of a rise. Emotionally disturbed is 6.4%. Intellectually disabled, which used to be considered mental retardation, is 2.6%. Other health impairment, which could be anything from ADHD to some more mild mental health disabilities, is 14.9%. Specific learning disability, which is the largest category, which is typically reading, writing, math, is 42%, and speech and language impairment is 20.7%.
Dr. Miller, can you, I'm sorry, Matt.
With the speech, is that usually takes care of itself as they progress along the spectrum of the grades, or where do you find the most need for?
Typically, the greatest need for speech is in elementary, where you might have a lot of articulation issues. From what you say, they take care of themselves. Usually articulation situations with children are resolved by end of elementary school. But there is still a great need and a need ongoing for children with language, autism, social communication skills that the speech therapists address all the way through high school. But those numbers do diminish as they get older.
Dr. Miller, what has your budget been for the last 3 years in actual dollars?
In actual dollars?
Yeah.
I'll try to bring everything you might ask. I might ask Ann to provide that. I know we run, Ann and I were just speaking today, we run about $6 million budget.
Oh, that was just wages.
That was just the wages.
You need Dr.
Which-
Miller's.
Well,
Wow.
if we look at direct instruction, and the additional services being guidance, psych, social work, legal, nursing, because when we prepare our AFR, we do allocate a portion based upon students with IEPs, 12, 13, 11.1 million, 13, 14, I didn't drop in the actual, but it's about 12 million, 14, 15, we're looking at the budget, 12.8 million, including all the extra services.
So that's, well, that is of our overall budget, that's 15% of our overall budget is special education.
Actually,
probably
getting
closer to
20%.
Okay, thank you.
Inside of the funds that we just mentioned, how much of that is reimbursable by the state versus directly financed by Exeter Township?
Well, the state subsidy is including the state's own special ed subsidy, and the federal IDEIA is about 2.5 million.
Thank you for helping.
And that has gone down every year since 0809.
So in actuality, the number of students with identified disabilities has decreased while the costs are increasing.
How do our percentages, number of students identified as a percent of overall student body compare to any sort of national averages or state averages? Are there any comparisons that we can look to that suggest that we are either over or above or kind of right on task here?
The state provides this to the district, and I can provide this to the board. It's also on the public websites, the PDE. We compare, the state average for compared percentage is 15.4%, and our LEA, our district is 17.9. I know from just my own experience looking at many suburban districts, 17%, 18% is typical.
You know, Berks County, and maybe other counties as well, but I know I've looked at Berks, and they tend to be a couple of percentage points higher than the state average for whatever reason.
Yes, Montgomery County as well.
Yeah, okay, I'm surprised.
I think that's from identification. I think we do a better job of identifying and getting the children placed in their, in IEP.
It could be. Mhm.
Would you then say that what we're experiencing in Exeter is what you experience in other districts inside of Berks County?
Yes,
As far
I
as
think,
percentage.
I think we're pretty average.
Or in the average, okay.
For probably this part of the state then,
Yeah, for this
extend
part of the
beyond
state.
Berks County.
So what part of our population is in the gifted program, which is under your domain?
The gifted children, typically I guess that runs around 5 to 7% of the population for the gifted students, and that's taken care of under another category. We have been changing our evaluation process to try to tighten those numbers up to make sure we're evaluating the most needy children, children who have abilities above our curriculum. We have 5 teachers now who each have caseloads of 65, just about right at 65, which is the state maximum.
So we have 5 gifted teachers.
We have 5 gifted teachers, and they all are right around the state permissible caseload.
And are they, how many?
Would you use
What your
Right,
words
please.
are saying.
How many are in the elementary gifted teachers?
Gifted teachers,
Like K through 5?
we have 3 gifted teachers in elementary.
And
And then the 2 of them, we have one teacher that covers, well, all 3 of our elementary teachers also have responsibilities at the other schools. So no one's just assigned to one school when it comes to elementary. Mrs. Laura and Mrs. Kane cover over at Reichton for their caseloads. Ms. Weaver, Captain Weaver covers over at the high school. We share caseloads to break them up.
If a child exhibits that they have exceptional abilities, but they're not able to pass the test for gifted, are they still given opportunities?
Oh, absolutely, especially in this district.
I mean, that's one of my big concerns, because, I mean, tests can be very judgmental. Sometimes a child could be just special sometimes.
That's true. I would say, and I've mentioned quite often since I've been in this district, that because of the differentiated instruction and what this district has really put a lot of manpower and money into, and where they have Mrs. Klein, her team, and now the math, differentiated instruction is throughout the district here. So if you have a child that is above grade level, they're getting what they need right in your curriculum. There's advanced math going on now. Well, there was advanced math going on when I came here, as early as elementary school, all the way through high school. So if a child was above the standard curriculum, they were getting what they needed every day here through the differentiated programs. Some of the 2 other pieces that I want to talk about were some of the 2 of the projects that I've been working on since I've been here. The supported cyber school and the cyber school question in general had to do with, how are we addressing, I heard the board discuss their concern about children leaving us to go to cyber school. The costs involved as well as the educational content that the children are getting. In 2013, we opened, I just gave you some data here. 2013-14, we opened our first attempt at providing our own supported our own cyber program. We had 21 students enrolled. 7 were successful, meaning that they either received their credits and came back to the school as they had planned, or the children had graduated. 14 were unsuccessful, that either they earned no credits and came back, or they graduated, or they dropped out. And unfortunately, some of the cyber school students had added to our dropout rate. As far as earned credits, and this is what we're going to also be using as a gauge each year when we're working on this project to measure success. Credits attempted and credits earned. So we had 42% of all the credits these 21 students attempted, 42% of the credits were earned. We started something new this year, the supported cyber school, where students actually come to this building. It's a small pilot. We're working with 10 students. They come, 5 can come in the morning, 5 come in the afternoon. They come for 3 hours. They're on a cyber environment. Then once they're successful enough, if they want to work from home, they can. So far, we have very encouraging results. We have had 10 students enroll, 9 are successful. Success being defined now because it's only the first quarter. Attendance and grades and completed work assignments is much stronger than we saw even last year at this time in the students we had in our other program. We did have 1 student drop out of the program, and we don't have credits earned yet because we're not at that point. So as we go on, that's how we're going to measure success of programming here in the district. One of the areas is going to be amount of credits earned and children who successfully complete the program and graduate if that's what they were looking for. And really not wanting the students to drop out. That's not the goal. What we're really looking for is if we get a chance to show that the supported cyber school is actually promoting students' growth in this environment, then what I would like to look at is can we promote this to the students who are out of the district. Students who are out of the district in cyber schools cost the district $22,500, nearly $23,000 for their special education and in cyber school. And so once we have enough information to show that this might be something that is really well worth a student and family's time and money to come back to the district, this kind of programming costs us around $8,000 to provide, and it provides strong educational components. It also provides the special education pieces that we need to provide. We need to provide transition programming, we need to provide study skills, we need to provide tutoring, and these things are something else we can grow at, we don't do when they're just at home in their own environments. So that is a goal that I'm working on, we're working on here, and seeing if something, this pilot is going to provide something like that for us.
So what's the time frame for this? And are you going to then market this program to?
Once, I'm talking to
community
Mr.
or-
Kane about it, probably by the time we get to the third marking period, end of third marking period, and we're seeing, you know, I keep holding my breath as the students come and go. These were students who struggled in school. They were near dropping out, or they were students that have dropped out and came back, or were in our cyber school last year and were not successful. This is the population of students we have. So far, so good. You know, it's tedious. You know, the honeymoon's been over with a couple of them. It's getting in here every day. It's coming to school, and I kept thinking, oh my, they're gonna not keep coming. But they are so far. So if we really get all the way around to, you know, the end of the school year and we're seeing success in this type of model, then it's something that I would feel comfortable going to parents and say, this is a model where we've seen a lot of success. You know, would you be interested in bringing your child back to the district?
So one of the things I was reading in publications that I receive on a daily basis is some information in Pennsylvania about cyber schools, none of which is good, and a lot of which talks about the scores and so forth. And but one of the interesting things was last year there was a 3% increase in the number of students statewide who elected to go to cyber schools. However, at the same time, there was a 35% increase in the number of special education students who elected cyber school. So it seems to be a trend. A lot of the kids that are now electing cyber school tend to be students with disabilities who may be frustrated with the lack of success in a brick and mortar school, or maybe dealing with other issues, be it social issues, anxiety, whatever, in addition to having a disability, which compounds the problem. And they tend to be at the high school level, and then they say, okay, I'm just done, I'm just gonna quit school or whatever. And as a last-ditch effort, the parent says, well, how about you stay home and you know, do your credits on the computer via virtual learning and so forth. And they say, yeah, okay, I'll give it a try. And it's typically not successful, as you just pointed out. But that seems to be a growing trend from what I was reading today and what we have been experiencing.
It's a growing trend, and we saw it last year in our small model that we did. Jason Dean, I like how he talks about it like a soft dropout. Like the student doesn't just drop right out, but you know, they convince their parents they'll do cyber schools, the truancy issues end. A lot of times because it's truancy, the parent sees this as possibly the student promises if they get to work from home, they'll do it. Well, working from home is very difficult. I think all of us get distracted working from home and not being in a school environment. And the students then go home. I guess they intend or whatever to sign up. They don't realize how hard cyber school is. It's very difficult, especially because many of the cyber schools with the PA Common Core, and they were under a bit of attack, I believe, a couple of years ago that they were not rigorous enough. So they upped their rigor. So when you're taking a standard 11th grade lit English on a cyber school environment, you're working. It's hard. And so a lot of students with special needs, a lot of students who think it's going to be easier working from home, it's harder than if they would be sitting in their classes, or just as rigorous if they're sitting in their classes. And so they're finding it very difficult, and they drop out. And then once they find it too hard at home, there's no way we're getting them back in the building. Then they just drop out. So it really is adding to the dropout rate.
So can you, in the future, do you see any impact on how many kids then? I mean, if we really start to evaluate this by credits attempted, credits earned, it just seems to me that we'll be able to better track when they graduate also. And my thought is that we could reduce the number of kids who are staying until they're 21.
Well, we're required to allow students to stay until they're 21, but yes, if we can help kids move along and do credit recovery and stay on track to graduate, definitely we could.
So is the cyber school then built into as a component of the IEP?
It's an educational placement that's offered. We are required to offer because we offer it to all regular education students.
So the parents would agree, I mean,
They have
is
to
it written
agree.
into the IEP when they
Yes. so
decide to
They
attend?
have to agree, it's their placement, and the part of the IEP, it says what placement, it would be Exeter supported cyber school, and then there's actually certain specially designed instructions that are available in cyber school that we put in the IEP, and we write the IEP for a cyber school environment.
And when the parents pull their children out for some other cyber school, those children then lose the services that,
The new cyber school is required to do it. How they handle it, I don't know, but they're required to fulfill IEPs just as we are. And they can find students eligible once they get there.
mhm.
Were these students that you had in this 10 students, you said, 9 I guess now, right, in the pilot program, were they from our virtual academy that we had? Or
One or two had attempted. It's varying, the students that are there. We had 2 girls currently who were part of the senior class last year who weren't able to graduate, and they're bound and determined to graduate this year. We have super seniors, which are 12 plus. 12th graders and 11th graders are made up of 10 students right now, well, 9 students. And various reasons, a couple of them, one boy had done the program last year and he was not successful at all, and now he's in our program here and he's doing much better. What's been very interesting to me is to see the attendance rate is very good. We're in the 90%, but the kids show up every day, which is half the battle.
do they get bused? Do they
Yes,
get
we
bused
provide transportation.
back and forth?
Yes.
Can we have a control group that maybe we could show parents then? I mean, you know what I mean, like, we do have other special ed students that are going to other cyber schools, right?
We do, yes. Currently, from looking at our numbers, we have 15 special education students that are in other cyber schools that are high school students. How I would get their data, I don't believe it's available to me because they're another program. But their parents might want to look at what we have to share.
Yeah, I think that would be, very good, because if we can prove that this is a much better alternative and better outcomes, I don't see why parents wouldn't maybe opt
Take a
in
look
for
at it, yeah. I'm hoping. Okay, and the last piece was, actually Mrs. Keisha, and I know some of the board members last year, we were looking at, we were asked to look at our life skills transition programming. The Berks County Intermediate Unit runs a very good program. A transition house is called over in Birdsboro, and we are required for students who are in the life skills programming area to have that type of programming. That's household management, social skills, financial budgeting, so forth, community involvement, and it costs roughly about $30,000 per student. And from talking to the high school staff this past year, we carefully choose students to go to those programs because of the cost. And so we've seen that there are other students that could benefit from that kind of programming, but we've pretty much limited to select few at times so we can keep the costs down. In 13 and 14, we sent 2 students at a ballpark of about $60,000. This year we budgeted $150,000 for 5 students. So we wanted to look at, could we do it here? What cost would it be to the district? And is that a better idea? And that's something that's proposed for the board to look at this budget season when we're looking at it. As Ann and I were discussing, it's adding another staff member, it's adding another budgeted position, it's adding someone else to PSERS. There's variables to look at. As far as opening the classroom, the initial cost, we have to get ovens and stoves and washer and dryer and things like that to set that up. The initial opening costs would probably be $15,000 to $20,000 max. But then after that, every year would be the staffing, teacher, 2 A's, probably around $160,000 to staff it. And as Ann said, only going up. The thing is the cost-benefit ratio, the way I look at it, that we'll be able to serve more students. Right now, to send 5 students, we were spending $150,000. To spend that same $150,000, if it was in-house, we could serve up to 12 students because we could look at serving possibly 6 to 7 students per first half of the day or second half of the day. So if we're going to be spending that money for a small handful of students, we could actually be serving more students with the same amount or less money. So I wouldn't necessarily say it's going to be a major cost savings, but it will benefit more students, the money that we are spending. And that's something, when the board's looking at all the budget proposals this year, that's something you may want to take into account.
So we have students that aren't in the program now, because we're talking about doubling the size of the number of students that would go into that program if we invested in it.
We have
here. So-
students right now who would benefit from that type of programming.
But they're not in that program.
But they're not in that
And
program.
they're not in that program because why?
We need to keep a cap on cost.
So we, as a board, made a decision not to send them to the BCIU program?
As
That-
a
that's what I'm
district,
reading here.
as a district, we choose the students who we feel would get the highest benefit from that program, but there are other children that could benefit from that kind of programming.
Maybe they wouldn't need as intensive, but they could still
They
benefit
could
from these
benefit.
parts of the program, but not to the extent where we would want to send them for that half day at BCIU.
Now,
Is
you
there
said-
I,
Sorry.
is there IEP call for them to go there, Dr. Miller? Is that in their?
They're IEP,
IEP.
but also if you're a life skills student, your actual curriculum requirements are you have to have that. Now, the high school does try to put some of those components in for their students. The BCIU has other well-established programs for a good program. And we are trying to bring more of that kind of program back to the district.
If we, let's just say as an example, we had 7 children that were eligible for the program, that we could use for the program, would we be able to offer that to another district to bring in?
Yes.
As far as a revenue source?
Yes, we could.
Okay.
So I guess it's a question for yourself and then for Ken at the same time. What kind of equipment do we need? And then Ken, what would it take to put that equipment in our building?
We've met about all that.
I mean, if you've already talked about what, you said we need a
Well,
stove, we need a washer,
set up
we
like
need a dryer.
a mini apartment
Mini
house.
house.
So we need to be able to cook, to be able to do laundry, to be able to make a bed, to be able to vacuum, the things that you would need for keeping home. So we need a washer and dryer, we need a refrigerator, we need a stove, we need a couch, we need a bed, we need a vacuum cleaner. The basics to sort of
But we're not
Mass
looking at
101 is the one that we're looking at. It has most of those functions. The one thing we'd have to add would be washer and dryer. It also has to be wheelchair accessible, so it's gonna have to be a front entry type thing, full-size front entry models. And basically what we looked at was taking the closet off of S101. There's a plumbing chase between the current full bathroom that's in there now. Bust out the wall, tap in for drains and water supply, run electric from across the lobby over there. That gets us the laundry function, all the other things basically are already there. And I think that, correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Miller, that relocates some of the program that's in there now, and we may have to do some other things, but I don't think we talked about what that other function would need. But we can convert that room for a relative cost, and as she points out, it's a one-time cost.
we're talking 40,000, talking 20,000 ballpark.
I estimated just putting the washer and dryer stuff in there, just for the infrastructure would be about 5,000. I would guess that the equipment would be another 1,000, but that's classical equipment, so I didn't consider that in the figures that we paid.
So we're looking at under $10,000 to get ourselves the equipment side, and it's just getting ourselves, making sure everything's accessible and making sure that we have everyone lined up as far as personnel. And as we said, we're able to offer this to more students that would be able to grow and be able to really take advantage of this, and it brings something in-house that we're using out-of-house. I mean, to me, this is and what Joe said is, it's something we can look at if we can really develop this in a positive way, we can bring this beyond ourselves. How long do you need to put a program like that together? Can you do that by next year, or do you need 2
That's
years?
the goal, yeah, that's the goal for next year. Ken and Ann and I and the team at the school have met to just get preliminary ideas together for the last few months and talked to Dr. Martin about it for the last few months. And it was based on the board's suggestion last year to, can we look at this? Can we look at this? feasible to run here? Is it more cost effective to run here? And so that's pretty much what, we're offering here. And then as Ann had said, it's something that's proposed as part of the budget.
Sue, what's our life skills population like at the high school? I assume we'll be doing this at the high school.
It would be at the high school, and it would be life skills, that would be Susan and Marina's classroom. So right now, they're projecting that next year we probably could start with 6 or 7 students. Because what we're looking at, the students who go up to the high school in life skills, they go in as 9th graders, and they're there till 21. That's definitely the
Right.
population most often that stays till they're 21. So they could be up at the high school for 6 to 7 years, depending on their birthdays. And so it's wise to have like a step 1 program for the younger students and like a second step program for the older students, because they just have different needs as they're moving through the process. There's more academic needs when they're in the beginning of high school, but much more life skills, job, independent living skills needed before they leave the high school.
Yeah, I mean, I would ultimately like to see 100% of those kids go through that program. And I don't know if we, where we would have to go to do that, but I think it's a very important service that we provide to those kids. And I think everything you see now, nationally, the trends are that's what we should be doing for life skills kids.
That's right.
Would we have the capacity to accept students from other districts to help reduce our costs
Yes.
and compete against the IU?
Yeah,
$20,999.
yeah, do it for $10,000 less.
Make a friend.
How many students at a time could go into a classroom, say, if we're doing this a half a day? What was the population you're looking at?
I think a wise population is under 10 or under.
So we're not
An
overburdening
allowable
the room.
population is 12 through the regs, but I think 12 is to be a little high.
Each half day or 6 and 6?
We talked about half day, so
So
I
10
mean,
and
at the
10.
most. That would be a hopping classroom. It's a large classroom that we're talking about, so it also depends on the space of the classroom, the square footage requirements for how many children are in a classroom and the classroom that we're using. But there would be some students that would be, they'd be working on different projects and programs, but 10 would be a busy classroom.
10 at a time, so
10 at a
basically
time.
20 per.
We're thinking morning and afternoon sessions, to be able to run it. And we don't have 20 students now,
No,
so we
but-
would definitely be able to have, students from outside the district once it was fully developed.
I know there's this nice little school district down the road that, park on.
Any further questions for Dr.
Yes.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you.
We have, I'm sorry, are there any public comments? Anybody? Seeing no volunteers, we have 2 sets of minutes to consider. I'll entertain a motion to accept those minutes.
So moved. Second.
Motion and a second. Are there any discussions or revisions? Hearing none, all in favor of adopting the minutes as printed, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Treasurer's report?
I move the treasurer's report.
You use your mic, please.
I move the treasurer's report as in the IB attachment folder.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor of accepting treasurer's report, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Business functions, we'll stop.
I move that the Board of School Directors award contracts for fiscal year 2015-2016 for the purchase of the following items to the Berks County Joint Purchasing Group, listed under numbers 1 through 4, and it's attachment 5A.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Discussion? All in favor, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
I move that the Board of School Directors approve budget transfers for the month of October 2014 in the amount of $67,214 and attachment 5B.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Discussion?
I'd just like to ask, where it has on the first page, transfers from learning support professional educators to learning support professional educators. I don't understand how that was transferred. It seems like the first page here, 25,000.
I'm just trying to
Are
find.
you looking at the attachment?
The $25,000, it's the 25,000. It seems like it says administration.
Okay, it's going from a professional contracted service, or to a professional contracted service from an IU budget line item. 322 is strictly IU, and when we budgeted originally, and this relates to the service for the program that Sue's talking
Oh,
about.
okay. I wasn't sure what that was about.
Any further discussion? All in favor of transfers, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The money is transferred.
I move that the Board of School Directors approve a property tax refund for 2014 in the amount of $3,062.50. The property owner is Michael L. and Charlene F. Kalsaka. Apologize if I missed that one. Resulting from an exemption granted by the Department of Military and Veteran Affairs. It's an attachment 5C.
Second.
Motion is second. Any discussion? All in favor, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
I move that the Board of School Directors approve a property tax refund for 2014 in the amount of $3,114.57 to property owners Robert W. and Judith D. Henry, resulting from an exception granted by the Department of Military and Veteran Affairs. It's an attachment 5D.
Second.
Motion is second. Discussion?
Just a question, what is this farmstead not used on the explanation here?
If they didn't have an approved homestead farmstead, that amount would not be incorporated into the calculation of the refund. Let me find it. Too many figures here. Oh, what happens is when you give a refund to a taxpayer and they would have used the homestead, farmstead amount of $191, which they would have reduced their bill by, we have to, when we give a refund, we have to take that amount, put it back into the pie of homestead, farmstead, and add it in for next year's allocation. You have to keep giving.
Any further discussion? All in favor, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
I move that the Board of School Directors approve property tax refund to the property owner St. Lawrence Properties due to a reduction granted per court order and stipulation, docket number 13-24840. That's an attachment 5E.
Second.
Motion is second. Discussion?
The smallest one I've ever seen.
Hearing none. All in favor, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
I move that the Board of School Directors ratify the following change orders for the Watton Creek site work rebid project, listed under G9 and G10.
Second.
Motion is second. Discussion? All in favor, please, ratification, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion carries.
I move that the Board of School Directors approve the following change orders for the Watton Creek site work rebid project, as listed below, with a net total of a credit of $69,466.45.
Second.
Motion is second. Discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
I abstain.
It's 8, 1 abstention.
I move that the Board of School Directors authorize District Administration to purchase alarm, access, and security system equipment for the administration building at a cost not to exceed $19,000. The capital project will be funded with capital reserve funds.
Second.
Motion is second. Discussion?
Well, I had a couple of questions that I sent to Dr. Martin this morning, and I'll just read my email and then we can have some discussion on that. Some of the components that I saw missing from the proposal were who were the actual persons who are responsible for the system monitoring And what is the process for dealing with security situations that develop either when noticed on camera or for alarms that are set off both during and after hours? Also, I did not see any system training listed or a maintenance price list for any camera system failure or network failure, nor did I see a backup power system if there's a power outage. Finally, the system seems to offer many options for people to access cameras through various forms, including cell phones. And I think there should be a policy, either written or implied, that limits who can see that information and what purposes for which it can be used.
Dr. Murphy, you care to comment on this?
So, depending, and Ann and Todd, and maybe Kevin can help me out with the parts of this that I'm not as sure about as they may be. But depending on the part of the monitoring that you may be talking about, obviously, as happens in the schools, the door buzzer system, which is part of this whole system, is monitored by the person at the front desk in the office, and they view and are able to converse with the person at the door and determine whether or not they should be admitted into the building. So that's how that works, similar to the schools. But
well, I think that, Ken, correct me if I'm wrong, but the system out front, you're talking about here, right?
Mm-hmm.
It can go to Donna's desk as well.
no, that's correct.
And a
yeah.
couple other desks in
Right.
case the front desk isn't occupied.
Yeah, we
At the
have.
school buildings, they are tied directly to the secretary's desk right now. This system, the one that was in this building failed. There was no, you could still have the buzzer, but you couldn't see who was out there. What we've already started the installation for is basically a slight upgrade to that. And that's what Dr. Davies is talking about, is instead of it being directly to a monitor that the secretary's going to see, it ties in network-wise to multiple computers. So again, it can be the secretaries in the front, or it can be other people
Our
in
secretaries,
various
for
places in
example.
the building.
There are times when the receptionist has already left for the day, it's after 4 o'clock or whatever, it's, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and I'm expecting someone to come in for a meeting. The doors are locked, obviously, and we need to have the opportunity to admit someone who might be standing at the doors. I think you were one day, Mike, when you were coming in. So that's why we have that set up at multiple stations. I had forgotten about that.
And that unlock is at all those desks as well?
Mm-hmm.
So somebody doesn't have to walk from their computer and go and
Right.
press a button at the front?
Right. So in terms of the cameras, we were still in the discussion stages about that, but I mean, if there should be a security breach, Todd and I are going to examine the cameras. If we think that somebody broke a window, if they broke a window at a certain time, or they tried to gain entry into the building, they were pulling on the door and the alarm went off, we would be able to view the cameras at that particular site and determine the identity of the person, or at least a description of the person, to assist the police in their investigation, as what happened last week at Owatin Creek. So we would be the ones to review the cameras with some assistance. For example, the technology department can give us assistance. Sometimes the police want a certain snapshot of time to be able to view the movements of a person who enters a building, and we rely on the tech department to come and help us to to tighten up that time frame and be able to turn it over to the police so they can use it as evidence. So in terms of monitoring, is there anything else?
Well,
the
no,
alarm.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, if the alarm would go off, as sometimes happens for various reasons, it could be an innocent reason, but it still could go off. I would be the first person to be called, and could be my replacement. Let's say I'm out of town or something, because we both live within a very quick turnaround time to get over to the building.
And you'd have to respond if the police showed up for monitoring.
We'd have to respond, and then if we needed to call someone else, such as Ken, or somebody else, then we could do that, but we would be the first ones to respond.
And as far as training and maintenance on the system? Do these systems break down a lot?
Yeah, with our other systems that have been installed, I know that the training piece was part of the installation process. Before they leave, they show you how to operate and so forth. We were confirming that today. I don't know if Joe was able to get an answer on that.
Well, he indicated that he believes it is, but we are getting a confirmation on that. He's worked with the company before on a smaller scale, and he believes that that is part of it. As far as maintenance contract on equipment, there's a 1-year warranty. There would be a maintenance contract available after that. I don't have that, but at this point we're waiting for all that from.
And then there's a backup power system, so that if for some reason we lost power somewhere, that system would still function.
Yeah, and that's kind of, in a short term, I understand it certainly could. And it's kind of a Ken question. Can we tie that into our generator and so forth?
Yeah, some of the systems have a battery backup, but that is for like short-term power outages. Same thing with the buildings. The door and door mag locks are a limited battery backup. For a long-term outage, there's an issue. Talking with Mr. Ways earlier today, there is backup power to the generator where a lot of these systems would be. Some of the outlying peripherals would not be battery backed up unless we added more wiring and more circuitry. And it's basically a cost factor of that, but that's not part of the proposal from CIA right now.
And I think it's very important that the administration building is as protected as any of the schools. And that we do need to have a security system. The system's only as good as the technology go. So I would still say that staff should remain vigilant should, situations occur, and that there should be some mechanisms, as I'm sure you have in place. Recently, a couple of weeks ago, you had an incident where you have the ability to respond or the ability to call the police, because there's always the potential that an incident can happen that you're not capable of dealing with here, that you'll need some outside assistance.
Oh, sure.
Any further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, all in favor of the procuring the security system, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
I move that the Board of School Directors approve the submission to Berks County Tax Claim Office the 2013 Exeter Township interim real estate taxes declared delinquent in the amount of $4,700.12. Last year was $33,032.41. And exonerate tax collector Charles Diamond from collection of same. That's in attachment 5. Aye.
I have a motion and a second. Discussion.
A significant decrease.
Right, and last year, I think it was a situation where a developer preferred to pay them when
Property sold.
That was my guess, but not this one.
But just in addition, for those who are not here and for the public, the tax collectors did report their collections through the face amount through October 31st. Exeter Township is at 95.8%, up from 95.4%. St. Lawrence is at 97.2%, which is down slightly from 97.6%. And the total is at 95.9%, which is up from 95.5%. Please keep in mind, too, that that means a majority of our residential customers have paid their taxes. And then when you look at the delinquency rate, typically it's going to be your larger commercial parcels that do make up those dollar figures. So, like example, the one in St. Lawrence is tentatively scheduled to sell, so hopefully that will go away. Some of the ones in Exeter, I think, are going to be ongoing. But that's just at this point in time, so I would anticipate, based on prior years, that our tax collection percentages will be at the same or maybe a little bit higher for the year.
Any further discussion of the exoneration? Hearing none, all in favor of exonerating the tax collector, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
I move that the Board of School Directors approve a resolution to issue the general obligation note series of 2015 in the aggregate principal amount of $5,790,000 to provide funds for a current refunding of the general obligation bonds series A and B of 2009 and paying the costs and expenses of issuing the note. The Board accepts the commitment letter from Customers Bank for the note, which bears a fixed interest rate of 1.35% per annum. It's an attachment 5J.
Second.
A motion and a second. Discussion. All in favor of the general obligation note, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
This is in the addendum. I move that the Board of School Directors approve the district's participation in the MCDC initiative and hereby authorize the filing of a self-report with the SEC on or before December 1st, 2014, in accordance with the MCDC initiative. The superintendent and the business manager are hereby authorized to prepare the self-report with the assistance of the school district solicitor and bond counsel, and to complete the filing as authorized by the attached resolution. That's an attachment 5K.
Accept the second.
Second?
A motion and a second. Discussion. Hearing no discussion. All in favor of self-reporting to the SEC, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion fails.
I abstain.
And one abstention.
I move that the Board of School Directors approve an agreement between Exeter Township School District and School Operations Service Group, Inc. to provide employee benefit consulting services at an hourly rate of $62.50.
Could I have a second?
Can I get a little back now?
Second.
Not before I get a
Oh,
second.
I
I got
never
the
get
second,
that
so I can,
right.
so they can answer. Now I'd like to ask a question.
I have a second. Now you may talk.
What is
Chair
this?
recognizes
Okay.
Peter.
You'll be voting on Valerie Klingel-Smith's resignation tonight. Has been our benefits clerk since 2008, about a year before I got here. Ann had hired her. She has an opportunity to go home to the West Coast, to Washington State. She's going to work for Yakima School District. In fact, she's already there. She left us in early November. It's been gracious enough to be in contact by phone. While we are searching for a replacement, and we're experiencing some difficulty with the association relative to hiring someone above the starting rate of $12.50. We need an experienced person in this position, and we're unable to find one at $12.50 an hour. So in the interim, while we resolve this dilemma with the association, we need some help in there, at least a day, day and a half a week. And they will provide us with a retired HR director, Barb Richard from Kutztown. I hope to, though, and I have made contact with, it's the HR half of Accountex, to provide someone on a temporary basis for the up and coming weeks until we can do a hire or perhaps have to subcontract service.
Will we be better off not hiring a clerk, but hiring a generalist? Which would be a professional then?
It would be a hard time keeping the position out of the bargaining unit.
I'm thinking they're more of a professional position than an assistant type staff.
What they'll be doing is still the nitty gritty of enrolling and answering.
Or a generalist.
You mean like the HR generalist?
Yeah, I mean, like the people we have at our firm, but, you know, don't make $12.50 an hour, I'll tell you that.
Is the beginning rate, you said $12.50 an
Yes,
hour?
yeah.
And yet you're gonna pay this person $62.50 an hour?
Yes, because that's what you pay for a professional.
Because no one will work for $12.50.
Well, I understand that, so why are we having such a low rate, $12.50?
That's the classification for that position has a starting rate of $12.50. We have in the past, in fact, we hired Valerie, and Ian hired Valerie above that rate. They didn't protest at the time. I have an excellent candidate from another school district. She can't come to work for $12.50, so we have to resolve that. In the meantime, the benefit issues continue.
But if you have an individual, sorry, Joe. If you have an individual who has experience in another district and has worked there for years, I'm taking, they wouldn't be coming in as starting salary then, they would have seniority pay. Thus, we should create a professional position.
Yeah, I think we talked about that a little bit.
Yeah, I don't know that it would survive a challenge at the labor board. There are 4 confidential positions in the district: my secretary, superintendent secretary, and secretary, and Todd's secretary, and we won't get another position. They have to be, it's not just confidential, they have to be, and Rustin is dealing with labor negotiations and grievance type work, preparing.
The generalist.
Is it mandated that that position is filled through the bargaining union?
Well, Ellis Katz tells me that if we cannot fill it, then we may go to them. They'll lose the position, then we may go to them with the subcontracting issue. They took it to their rep council, their leadership last night, and it was I was looking at a salary of $17 or $18.
At a subcontracting level?
To hire a person at that rate. If I would have been permitted to hire a person, I was looking at between 17 and 18.
Yeah.
Val was making $19.50 when she left.
Well, the qualified person that Maddie has already interviewed.
She's at 18.
Is about
40.
at that now, so we think that she would work here for that same amount of money, but certainly not for a $6 an hour pay decrease.
It's a conundrum.
Yeah. I had a friend that interviewed here, really just wanted to come here as a school secretary. And she had been an administrative assistant somewhere, just couldn't afford to come.
So again, so if we would vote against this, then that would basically put us in a position where that's an unfilled position. And then
This $62.50 is a really short time period for me to get some. I know this company. I know who they're supplying us. I've known her for years, just to give us some temporary relief so benefits don't lapse. So.
Are we in open enrollment now?
No.
That's the good news.
And how often would she be working here?
A day a week, day and a half.
So
For a
it's
couple.
$62.50, but it's not like 5 days a week, 8 hours a day.
I just want to ask, why isn't it when you have experienced teachers, you can hire at a higher rate, but
That's exactly
the question you asked?
We made that, yeah, because it says in the teacher's contract that the superintendent can determine the entry rate. But this is a different contract that we're dealing with.
Yeah.
How much does account temps cost per person?
About, depending on the level of experience, between 15 and 20.
It's funny, I was going to tell you to call account.
It's the HR half. It's called office team. Is the other half of accountants. They're the HR piece.
Any further comments, questions? All in favor of hiring the employee benefit counselor on a temporary basis, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No.
I've got 3 to 6. Motion carries.
226, that's 11, isn't it?
3 to 6.
I move that the Board of School Directors authorizes district administration to have core boring testing conducted at the site for the proposed new transportation center for a cost not to exceed $12,500.
Second.
A motion, second discussion. All in favor, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
I have a motion carries 7 to 2.
That concludes business fund.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Bender, personnel.
I move the Board of School Directors accept the following resignations listed under Part A, number 1, support staff, number 2, school health services, and number 3, extracurricular staff.
Second.
Motion, second discussion.
Just a question. Did we receive any reason from Charles Gibbons?
We do not,
Nothing?
nothing.
So he just like called up or somebody called up and said, not interested in doing it?
He sent a letter for us. He sent a letter saying, I hereby resign effective immediately.
Okay.
How long was Dr.
I don't know how many years, a number of years.
Yeah.
Probably 4 or 5.
4 or 5.
See that when we started questioning his abilities, when we went and did our thing, not because he lacked ability, but we started to give hassles about that at the beginning of the season?
I don't think anybody questioned his clinical abilities, I think it was the process that was not questioned.
It's professional, he probably doesn't want people questioning.
Well, he never did do any work for us this year, and so, I mean, he resigned, so we have to just find someone else.
Any further comments on any of the resignations? All in favor, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
I move the Board of School Directors approve the following appointments under Part B, number 1, substitute teachers, Part A, certificate.
Second.
Motion and second discussion. All in favor, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
I move the Board of School Directors approve the following guest teachers under Part B, substitute teachers.
Second.
Motion and second discussion.
Dr. Weber, have you had any success in looking for certified teachers?
We continue to look. There is a shortage of students graduating from the programs. I've contacted several places. I think Dr. Bender was going to do some recruiting for us at Penn State. Doing our best. We add them. The problem is they also work. They tend to work for other districts too, so we are in competition.
And we're experiencing, just this year, pretty significant shortage of substitute teachers. As you'll see in letter E, when we're asking to actually raise the salary to be more competitive with the districts we're competing with. And without guest teachers, we're experiencing shortages on a daily basis, even on days when there's not very many people absent. And without our guest teachers, I don't know how we could manage.
That ESOP system, people go in and they plot their strategy, when they're going to work, where they're going to work, who's paying them the most, and off they go.
But isn't the ASOP now rolling out people that aren't certificated first?
No.
Or how's it
No,
working?
I all hope.
I'm just asking a question.
When we put in ASOP, I thought, wouldn't it be nice that an art teacher was subbing for an art teacher? Well, that's all out the window now. It's like every person for themselves. If that was holding up the process while it searched for the subject area of the teacher. So it's pretty much let's fill them.
Robert Crote is certified. Why isn't he sitting in A instead of B?
Because he went through the BCIU guest teacher program. He has not taught in years. He's retired from St. Joe's University, worked for Don Julia in the athletic department. He went through their training program. Went through their training. He's got a certificate, but he came through the IU.
It's probably inactive, don't you think?
Yeah,
Probably.
Well, he was at St. Joe's. If you
Well,
could put up with St. Joe's, this is like
I understand. Any further discussion?
My own child graduated.
Yeah.
All in favor of approving the guest teachers, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
At 7-2.
I move the Board of School Directors approve the appointments of the sports staff under number 2 and number 3, the extracurricular staff.
Second.
Motion is second. Discussion?
I just have a question about how athletic coaches are hired. What is the process for, is the athletic director involved in those interviews, or who makes that selection for the?
Yes, when a coach is hired, I mean, if they're rehired and we know them, you know, it's we just offer them a renewal of their contract. But if they're a new hire,
It's
yeah.
posted, they
Yeah, just
apply
see it.
online, and then, and Mr. Lagath conducts, he selects, who he's going to interview, and then makes a recommendation to the superintendent.
And who else is involved in the interview process?
If it's an assistant coach that they're hiring for, then the head coach would be.
With being already in the middle of the basketball season, is this going to be prorated for this coach, their salary, or how's
That's
this all
what
work?
just started, yeah.
Okay, because I keep seeing boys highlights on TV and
It's going to
everything.
be prorated at 100%.
Boys basketball is just starting now.
Any further questions or comments?
High school.
All in favor, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
I move the Board of School Directors approve or ratify the following requests for a change of status listed under Part C, number 1, support staff.
Second.
Motion is second.
Mrs. Clay informed us that letter E, Dawn Shook, it should be 6.25 hour position, not 6.24 hour position.
Dr. Bender and Mr. Brady, you accept that
Yes.
modification?
Yes.
Any further discussion? All in favor, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
I move the Board of School Directors approve or ratify the following leaves of absence listed under Part number 1, certificated staff, although looks like A and B are not certificated.
Yeah, you're right.
I move the Board of School Directors approve or ratifying the following leaves of absence for the staff listed A, B, and C.
Second.
Motion is second. Discussion? All in favor, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
And Dr. Bender, for letter E, for number 3, where it says 115 for retired teachers, currently 115, it should say it's currently $100. That was my typo.
Oh, thank you. That saves a question.
Yeah.
So I move the Board of School Directors approve the following changes in the daily pay rates for substitute teachers. Number 1, rate will change from $90 to $105. Number 2, the rate will change to $110 after 20 days of cumulative work in a school year. And number 3, the rate will change from $100 to $115 for our retired teachers.
Second.
Motion is second. Any discussion?
Can you determine what budget impact that would have?
Overall, 15% increase, $50,000.
$50,000 a year.
Where does this put us? You said you looked at the county.
Yeah.
Where does this put us with the county?
It would probably put us a little bit above, about $5 above.
You mean like we would be the highest?
We wouldn't be the highest, no, but, no, I'm just looking really at the surrounding districts that we're
Okay, all right.
competing with. We would now be the highest countywide.
See, I would wonder that. Well, I would just hope that, I hope this has the impact that you think it might
Well,
have.
could we get a report back maybe in a couple of months just to see how effective
It's helping.
it was
Yeah.
raising the rates, just so we know?
Yeah, definitely. We'll keep you posted because it's a problem. And as we said last week, we're attacking it on a number of different fronts, one of them being more competitive with what we pay, but, you know, the recruiting process, even, you know, I'm talking to teachers who are thinking about retiring, you know, do you think you'd like to sub once you do retire, that type of thing.
Booking in advance, we've noticed the pattern that they want them the night before, so
Yeah.
we book some extras. That seems to be helping a
That
bit.
seems to be helping. We're hoping we don't overbook, but
Yeah,
How-
it's been just the extras.
How will we communicate? You know, how does the word get out that we've raised the rate?
I think we haven't talked about that, but I'm assuming we're going to send a letter to
Well,
everybody.
send
Okay.
a letter, we can do that through ASOP. We
Right.
can also put a web alert on ASOP, so those,
Okay.
those teachers who work for other
So
districts.
we'll do it electronically.
Will see it. Those teachers who work, will see that right away. We can do it tomorrow.
Okay,
I just think we need to make an effort,
Yeah.
or, you know,
To get the word out.
yeah,
absolutely.
exactly.
And this would be effective?
Yesterday.
as soon as we,
You need it now.
Okay, tomorrow.
I have, is there any further discussion?
Bob, just one
You've
question.
given Betty a job.
Have we ever looked at building subs? Where we create a position where it's a little bit of a premium, where we lock someone in for a calendar quarter, half a year, full year, where you have someone that you know is going to be there, that is certificated? I
Yes.
know that's a concern with some.
Historically, anyone who's ever done that has provided benefits for those people. I don't know whether you won't go there.
Well,
Yeah.
we've had in the past guaranteed
I think,
subs,
yeah.
80 days, I think it was.
60.
60 if they accept or gave us priority in working for us.
Well, if we're having issues attracting people, I think I'm not sure if raising the rate $5 or $10 is gonna make the difference. We may wanna look at alternative sources or just alternative ways of doing it if we're trying to get people in to handle the classroom. So it's something to think for down the road.
Yeah, well, let's see how this, you know, plus the other things that we're doing, what kind of an impact this has. And I don't know why it was dropped in the past if we used to do that guarantee, but maybe we'll have to talk about something like that in the very near future if it becomes necessary.
Joe, the amazing thing about all of this is when I decided to retire from business and then decided to go back to work, I went back as a substitute. This is 1997. The rate was $120 a day. So you realize what's happened. I mean, obviously, as districts' budgets have become tighter and tighter, it's a place to cut. Unfortunately, folks now, they look at it and say, but why would I do that for that much money?
Any further discussion?
Do we have substitutes at this point during the year that have been pretty loyal to us?
Yes.
Oh, really?
They are in essence building subs. They are.
So can you basically almost guarantee that they would be the ones that would want to be here if they had the option to be here? That we could do the type of thing that Don had just mentioned?
They want to work in particular buildings. It might be where their children go. It might be they don't want to go near the high school. It might be they will never take special ed. They're loyal, but it's not necessarily to the district. If they're loyal.
They're loyal on their terms.
I swear, at the senior high, they're loyal to Deb Pismansky, the secretary. I mean, she has really developed a wonderful rapport with them. And she actually, she's been overbooking for us, and she cajoles them, to go to another school if she has a couple extra. And they'll do that for her. When I assign them, they cancel altogether. She talks to them in person, they go.
Yeah, but by then they're already there. You're doing this.
I'm doing it for them.
Yeah.
Is there any further discussion? All in favor, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
I move the Board of School Directors authorize payment to Joseph Cambria, who was the senior high school girls basketball head coach, at a salary of $6,966 for the 2012-2013 school year.
Second.
A motion, second discussion.
What happens if you vote no? After
It's twice that much,
the court here, after the ruling, I guess my question is,
well, it wasn't really, it was not only the ruling, but the vote of the board.
We'll probably have a legal challenge
It
and
was
we'll
also-
probably be unsuccessful.
It was also the recommendation of solicitor, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
Any further
I
discussion?
know, I hear you.
All in favor, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion
Abstain.
carries. And one abstention, 2 abstentions. 7 and 2. Thank you.
I move the Board of School Directors approve the following staff conferences listed under Part G, number 1 through 10.
Second.
A motion and second. I checked with the IU, particularly in those cases with, that we considered last month where Julie and them were going out there. That instance was the result of an overbooking of the class. And they actually added 2 additional sessions and notified people late of the class availability for them, of which we were one. The other instance, when they will not notify us on time with staff at such conferences, is when the state comes down and asks them to hold them. And at that time, they will issue the invitations, and sometimes that is on a short schedule. They swear up and down that the IU never calls a class more than 6 weeks short. But, and I trust them, I agree with them, because I'm on their board. So, just for information. Yes. I have a motion and a second on conferences, go ahead.
I have a question about item 7.
Yes, item 7, that lists a registration cost of $100. That is not correct. That should be 0 cost. The only cost is for the $100 substitute. So the total cost is correct of $100.
Any further discussion, sir?
I'd just like to say, as a comment on conferences, I think that it is a good idea for Exeter people to get out to these things, not only to attend the conferences, but actually get out and talk to other people. So I'm always biased in favor of getting our people out. New ideas, new thoughts, new recommendations come from simply getting out and talking to other people.
Any further discussion? All in favor, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
That completes personnel.
Thank you, Dr. Bender. Mrs. Kutcher, student function.
Item A, reporting field trips in the 16-mile radius. I just want to hold up 40. And item B, I move that the following field trip, which is beyond the 16-mile radius, be approved, signify band, orchestra and chorus members to perform at Disney World on December 10th to 14th, 2020.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Discussion.
How many days will students be missing class?
3.
Thank you. Dr. Bender, will you slip up and say yes for this and then realize that you messed up?
Watch me.
Any further discussion?
You took my question.
Hearing no serious discussion, all in favor of the senior band going to Florida December, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion carries.
I want to know.
Curriculum programs, Mr. Deasinger.
No, we're.
Thank you, Mr. Kutcher.
Think about something.
Committee.
Voting against isn't.
Committee?
Come on.
Yeah, we had a meeting on November the 3rd, and we had a lively discussion.
There were a lot of us here for that.
Actually, I want to tell you, I'm really very grateful to be the chair of this committee. I think that it's what education is about. I get totally frustrated by how much of curriculum we're that we don't have control of any longer. But I think for us to stay on top of best practices and at least the ways that we can put these things in front of kids and make sure kids learn is very important. It's very important. And the committee, I think, really does have a very healthy process. That's all. Thank you.
Technology.
All the freshmen have received their Chromebooks. So far, there's been one broken screen and one unit that had to go back to Dell for service. Dan Wilczek continues to support the classrooms and providing direct instructional support. There's a tech station at the senior high to assist with the transition. The teacher steering committee continues to meet and provides feedback and is helping Joe Way and his crew to tweak their one-to-one procedures.
Mike, do you know if the damaged unit was unpacked that way, or was that a result of an accident?
I have no idea.
Okay, I just was curious.
1 out of 350.
Yeah, I know, it's not bad, but, yeah.
So far, it's only.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I wanted to know.
The biggest complaint I heard
I
was
didn't break the screen.
in the Talon, the newsletter, the kids were griping about the carry bags.
Not cool.
They were uncomfortable and they didn't look cool.
Oh,
Look like a bunch of nerds, man. What's going on?
Thank you, Mr. Chaplin. Any other questions for me? BCIU, we're surviving under the new director, and really they're short of money. The state's going to pay them very quickly, and I think it's something like the state owes them $17 million now, and we're waiting for it. Other than that, nothing going on out there since they can't pay anybody because they're short $17 million. Athletic committee.
Well, when we were last here, the girls were beating Berks Catholic 2-0 in the county finals. I'll let you know they did win that match in 5 games. So they ended up coming in 3rd in the districts and then made it to the semifinals of the states, where they had Parkland on the ropes, won the first 2 games, and were up in the 3rd, and then Parkland, who ended up winning the state championship, came back. So they ended up losing in 5 games in the semifinals of the states, which is awesome. And the football team did make it to the playoffs and had a few more turnovers than we had this year, but still, overall, the first part of the year, the sports programs did a great job across the board. I'm going to be getting together with Mr. Lagath to try to have an athletic meeting sometime next month, depending on how many eggnog parties he's at. That's it.
Thank you, sir. District growth, township liaisons continue to work with them on this redoing of the zoning and attraction of commercial activity into the township. Believe it or not, something is being accomplished. Hopefully we'll reap some benefits from it. Public relations, Mr. Kramer.
I'd like to introduce Heather Shainline, who is the new autistic support teacher this year at Ryton, and her mentor is Tracy Prout. They've been observing the meeting tonight. Thank you, lady.
Welcome aboard.
I welcome you very much. You're welcome to come every month.
I love company.
I commend you for staying.
One last item is the junior high musical is this Friday night and Saturday afternoon, and the senior citizen performance is this coming Thursday. Breakfast is at 8:15. If anyone's available, the show's at 9. And unfortunately, we only have about 50 senior citizens signed up to come to see the show. It's a Little Mermaid. I have a feeling that may have a little something to do with it.
They can bring our grandkids. Come on.
You're more than welcome to
Grandkids are the show.
join us on Thursday. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I know you know there's a law there.
BCTC,
No report.
facilities.
We had a meeting a month and a half ago at the Jacksonville Elementary School where we reviewed various issues dealing with facilities. Issues that will be coming up in the future will be paving of parking lots and such. Anything else you can remember off the top of your head, Ken?
A lot of needs, a lot of dollars associated with it.
We'll be further exploring that. We'll have a meeting in January, but not for December because we'll be too festive.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes, you may.
Sort of related. Somebody planted a 45-mile-per-hour sign right in front.
Planted it?
Yes, right in front of the one-room schoolhouse, and I think, I find that was terrific.
Was it on the that way or this way? Was it going away from the intersection? Like you go through the intersection and then you'd see it on your
That's right.
radios?
You could.
Yes, it's there for a purpose.
What's the purpose?
Because the people crossing that have to know that they're not going to be able to speed. I can't tell you it'll be a permanent sign, I can just tell you it's going to be there for until construction ends.
I just find it odd that we would have a 45-mile-an-hour sign.
And it's 60 mile an hour zone.
Exactly. Exactly.
But in school,
It has nothing to do with the school, it has everything to do with safety. We don't care about people who are not there, we care about the people that are there on the road. We are in a, that is in a public environment. That is within the right of way.
Mr. Pitts,
That's exactly.
is he-
the question is.
you know, there's a 45-mile-an-hour sign planted in front of the one-room schoolhouse. And it doesn't make sense to me that you could come through that intersection and do, well,
It's not about the people coming through the intersection, it's about what they're going to do once they get past that sign. It's
10 feet?
instructing them. It's instructing them, if it's inside a little black border with a little white background with little black letters, it's then enforceable. So they're going more than 45 miles an hour, and at that point going forward, they're told that they are now exceeding the legal speed limit, and they could be in violation and get one of those nasty little tickets, and then have to pay money to the state.
I don't want to listen to him. Can you, is that actually true that it's not a problem because, despite the fact that the school is sitting right there?
Well, technically, the school is on Church Lane, not on Lee Turnpike at 566. So the address is Church Lane. And Church Lane is small.
Mr. Pitts, I don't know whether you win or he wins.
Well, technically, what we're saying is they didn't put a speed limit sign on Church Lane, they only put it on Old Turnpike.
Okay.
How you feel?
I can't believe that
Why
you're
worry?
going to
You don't even live there.
45 miles an hour. School buses coming out of that intersection. I mean, it doesn't make sense.
It's for what's going to happen later.
Thank you.
Audit Committee.
No report, sir.
Payment request, Mr. Prime.
I move that we pay the bills, which is an attachment XVIII. There were
18 for those that use the read run.
void checks of $3,228.12. From the general fund, there was $923,851.74. From the capital projects fund, $13,635. And from the Owaton Creek Elementary School, $164,907. I move that we pay our bills.
A motion, second, discussion?
What did we pay Apollo Pools $113 for, since we don't have a pool?
Top of my head, I can't answer that. I can let you know.
Probably for chemicals for the sinks,
Oh, maybe the pond?
the whirlpools in the PT section.
Maybe the Whirlpool, that makes sense.
Oh, yeah, that's probably it.
Good for you. Good job.
Can you explain the community service supplies? We have quite a few people getting $10 for doing community service.
Volunteer.
Volunteer.
Criminal history check.
Oh, great, thank you.
Any further discussion? All in favor, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Superintendent's report.
Thank you. Just a quick item. In your folders, your blue folders, I believe, there's an article from Education Week called Study, Close Screening Process Can Improve Teacher Hires. You know, we had some discussions a couple of months ago about our hiring processes, and Betty had sent me this article, and it really talked about a school district in Spokane, Washington, and how their close screening process actually helped to boost student achievement, especially in terms of math, because they were so careful about the criteria that they used for selection, for interviews and selection. And when I skimmed it, I kind of got excited because I realized that their process really seemed very closely aligned to ours. And really, that's always been our goal, to make sure that we have a legally defensible, good hiring process that will allow us access to the very best candidates we possibly can have. Certainly for teaching, which is most critical, but for any position in the school district, because everybody contributes to the success of our organization, regardless of what the position is. So, and a lot of the credit for that obviously goes to Dr. Weber, but I just wanted to point out that when I saw this study, I thought, oh wow, this is really, we do this, we do that. Do you have anything to add, Betty?
No. I actually read the 58-page report, and those of you who are really into statistics would love it. But because one thing that it didn't show a correlation was with absences. They studied Monday, Friday absences, and there was there was actually a negative correlation relative to the number of absences and this hiring process, because the more teachers there, the better the kids will do. Speaking of substitutes.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's, if you'd like to read that, that's in your folders. And my last item is also very quick. The circuit riders, I don't know if you remember me talking about the group of mainly retired superintendents, but retired administrators who have been hired to promote the fair funding formula throughout the state of Pennsylvania. And each of these so-called circuit riders are assigned to a couple of different counties, and our circuit rider, Tom Seidenberger, who I actually knew from the Lehigh Valley and was just recently retired last year from East Penn School District in Emmaus. And he was looking for the districts that he represents in Lehigh, Berks, and Montgomery counties for each district superintendent to appeal to their board and see if anyone on the board would like to be on his contact list for information regarding the progress of the fair funding formula effort throughout the state. So if any of the board members... Okay, thank you, Russ. And if there's any relevant information, I would forward you the emails because I'm already on the list. So, thanks, Russ. You could be our board contact person, and but I will forward information as it becomes available from Tom. Thank you.
Are there any other matters to come before the board?
Question?
Yes, I'd like to ask Dr. Martin. I was reading in the Reading Eagle about the number of homeless children in the United States, like it's now 2.5 million. And I was wondering, do we have any homeless children attending our schools?
We do, and I'm going to defer to Don because that's one of his responsibilities. And I don't know if you have the exact number because it's a moving target, I know.
I think at last count, we were at 9 students who applied, who could be considered McKinney mental homeless students.
Well, I did talk about, their great needs and what how devastating it is to a child to be homeless and then try to come to school each day and concentrate on their schoolwork.
Jason, you had
Yeah, I did. Do we have a ward parliamentarian?
Normally the solicitor is...
Yeah, that's what I thought. I just raised this question because we seem to be practicing, shall I say, opposed to everything that I've been taught about parliamentary procedure. I would just wonder if we could find out about abstentions. I've always been told that when you abstain on a vote, you have to give your reason why. You have to state whether it's a conflict and what the conflict is. And abstention is not, at least in my understanding, you don't have the option to be a member of this board and then just choose not to vote on stuff. And I would just like some clarification.
We'll get that clarified.
Thank you.
There-
I'd be happy to provide any reasons for my abstention.
There's
Well,
also a state law, maybe John can remind us about.
Yeah, that's what I
That
thought.
requires a written statement when someone
Right, there is a
abstains.
form, and I'll bring it to the next meeting for you to.
Sure.
We
Have
have,
it filled out in previous board meetings for previous abstentions, or is this something?
Oh, no, I abstained
Not
a
to
couple
dis-
years
you
ago
know,
for
it's
something
been
I
done
had to
before,
vote for.
but I've been remiss at bringing them with me, just because I don't think about it. But I'll bring it to the next.
Okay, I would remind everyone that subsequent to adjournment, we will have the discussion on executive compensation. So I entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. We are adjourned.